Welcome to the Impact Room, brought to you by Douglas Jackson, who help you hire more impactful, diverse leaders who stay for longer and are more successful. The Impact Room is a business, CX, and leadership podcast where exceptional, diverse, and impactful leadership and wisdom is shared. We dive deep into pressing topics that impact your customer-led business, featuring interviews with CEOs, COOs, Chief Customer, Chief People Officers, directors, influential leaders, and subject matter experts who share their lived experiences, top tips, thoughts, advice, and industry trends to help elevate existing and future talent. So let's dive into our next episode, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, or share if you enjoy this content. Thank you. Great. So hello, I'm Michelle Ansell, Managing Partner at Douglas Jackson, and today I am very pleased to be welcoming Carolyn Blunt to the Impact Room. Carolyn is someone we've known for a good number of years, an industry expert and a real passion for people, leadership and learning. Carolyn has built her career in talent development, leadership coaching and creating future-ready teams. She's the former CEO founder of Real Results, and she's currently Managing Director of Talent Solutions at Sedgwick, where she's helping organisations unlock potential, accelerate careers and build stronger leadership pipelines. What I love about Carolyn is her focus on practical development with impact, especially her commitment to supporting women in leadership and making sure that industry moves towards greater balance. Carolyn, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Michelle.
Fabulous. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your career firstly?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have been in learning and development for more than 2 decades now, and it's been a really rewarding place to be. My background was initially in contact centres, learning and development, which is, I think, how we first met.
Yeah.
And that spanned a range of different industries. But half of it was probably around insurance. And then more latterly in my career, I've specialised in helping insurance brokers and financial services firms, utilities, regulated markets really. But I still have a very keen passion for retail and those sort of fun sectors.
Yeah.
And now that I'm at Sedgwick, I've got the ability to work across all of those, which is really exciting. And I've always been focused on, like you said in the intro, practical learning solutions. I've never done learning and development for the sake of it. I want people to be able to transfer and change knowledge, skills or behaviour as a result of that session, which was why my initial company was called Real Results, and it offered a money back guarantee that if the learning didn't achieve what the client expected, we would give a money back guarantee to that, which never got exercised. So that was good. But yeah, noble, tell it like it is. I think, you know, when I got married and became Carolyn Blunt in 2001, everyone fell about laughing because it was probably about the most practical name.
Best surname.
Yeah, for me to become. So I think that's what I've got a reputation for, is being really transparent, honest, and solving problems in a very realistic way.
Yeah, and I think it's probably why, you know, as I say, the things we love about you and why you resonate so much, obviously, with us as a business, and why I was so keen to get you on, really. So as you've said about, or as we've mentioned, you've recently joined Sedgwick, and we've spoken about the talent solutions and especially the women in leadership piece. So can you tell us a little bit more about that then?
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined Sedgwick in May, but Women in Leadership is a program that I've run previously with great success. So I was given the opportunity to set my own strategy for what Sedgwick was offering to the market in terms of talent solutions, and that encompasses both learning and resourcing. But on the learning side of things, I really wanted to focus first and foremost on an open program for women, and I have revamped a program that I've run previously, kind of brought it up to date, and we've launched that for both level 3, which is emerging aspiring leaders, and level 5, which is mid to senior leaders. It's a 12-month program, so it's not for the faint-hearted, but it's very well structured, and we bring those women together in groups of 15. And what I get, time and time again, is the feedback that networking piece is really powerful. So a lot of organizations, particularly larger ones who have the luxury of having in-house L&D teams and ERGs for women, have been able to put on their own female talent programs, and that's great. But for those firms who may want to just send 1 or 2 women, this program is ideal. Or for those women who want to have a more external network, and just feel that they can come away from their day job a bit more separately to be in this program, that works really well. It has a Chartered Management Institute qualification as an option. So I never ever wanted to make this compulsory, because I'm always mindful that as women we have so many plates to spin. We have, a lot more usually to think about. I don't know why it always seems to be assumed that we're the ones. I don't know if you watch the kind of Stacey Solomon and Joe kind of podcast, but what really creased me in one of those episodes was where she said the thing they argue about the most is the for you part. I'll look after those kids for you. I'll empty the dishwasher for you. I'll cut the grass for you. Like, why is it for me? Like, this is our home and our kids and all of that. So I think, by saying that the Chartered Management Institute qualification is compulsory, we're adding another sort of 60 hours of learning there. I would love for everyone who doesn't already have a leadership and management qualification to exercise that option. But if it's a make or break situation that your employer isn't going to give you those 60 hours in work time, you've got to do it in your own time, and you've got a young family or caring responsibilities, or you're a single mum or whatever, then it might be off-putting. If you've got less confidence with academic study, it might be off-putting. I'm there to support the women who choose to do that qualification and give them that extra wraparound coaching, but they've got to invest quite a lot of time and energy in that themselves. But it's a really good option for women who've perhaps pursued technical career paths up until that point, and maybe they've done, insurance exams or banking exams or whatever industry they're in, and now they need to think about balancing that out with a leadership and management qualification. And also psychologically, to add to the credibility of, I've got that external validation and that kind of certification of leadership and management, is just psychologically a game changer for a lot of women. So it's got that option. It's also got the personality profiling tool Insights Discovery as one of the first pieces. And if women are coming to that program and they've already done Insights, brilliant. They can come and bring the profile they've already brought before. But if not, I like everyone to have the same level playing field and do that, because you might have done DISC or you might have done Myers-Briggs, but we need to have this common language. And ultimately it's about having that space to revisit what your preferences are. We're all either right-handed or left-handed. We're never usually ambidextrous. If you are, you're super special. But this is about understanding these are my natural preferences and these are my less developed. They're not better or worse. They're just different. So it's really about being able to grow and learn that flexibility as much as we can, and being aware of, actually, that is never going to be my strength, and I need people around me who've got that to give. So we do Insights Discovery, we do the Chartered Management option, And then there's 4 in-person modules. And obviously the level 3 is much more around some of the fundamentals of leadership and management, you know, so you've got to be able to coach, you've got to be able to delegate, you've got to be able to communicate. But when we get to the level 5, we're focusing much more on kind of that strategic leadership. This is for women who have really got their sights set on a C-suite role in the future. You know, they're getting boardroom ready at that level. So we are actually going to spend some time thinking about how comfortable we are with P&Ls and budgets and forecasts, because there's a lot of research that shows women who have a male boss often have a one-to-one that is very different to what the male boss has with their other male subordinate. And that tends to be more data driven and more financially driven, and then the conversation with the female tends to be more about people and culture. And you know, so I really want the women on the level 5 program to be aware of that and to drive their one-to-ones with their leaders to have that more financial and strategic perspective. So they've got to get comfortable with that. And then lots of other pieces around sort of leading and communicating change, being comfortable about using data and AI more broadly, as well as the confidence and credibility. Even at the level 5, it still comes into it. You know, I get women all the time who are super brilliant in their technical field, but yet won't sit on a panel at a conference or push themselves into the limelight, or still have those reservations about their ability as a leader with people. And so it's really about closing the gap in that confidence and getting them to like themselves and trust themselves in those moments, because they need to share that not just for their own profile, but so that other women can see what they do and how they do it and be inspired and learn from that. And if they're not putting themselves out there, it's a bit of a missed opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like a really comprehensive program and much needed. And the one that, well, there's so much in there that we could get into, but I really liked the fact that you, as you say, you identify the differences in the male versus female and how they communicate and the one-to-ones and how they ask for things, how they show up. I think it's very different. And I was at a conference. Well, it was a small women's conference, and someone from the Big Five was there, a lady, and she said to me, and it always sits with me, and she was clearly very ambitious, clearly really keen to progress, doing well, top performing, and her boss actually came to her and said, why aren't you coming to me and asking me for these things? And she's like, well, because I'm good, I'm getting on with my job, I'm performing, etc. She's like, and they were like, yeah, but your male counterparts are asking me for X and Y all of the time. And I think that in itself is a significant issue, isn't it, Carolyn?
Yeah, and it's just about having that light bulb moment of, there are other people who are doing this and getting things out of it, and I'm just kind of quietly here getting on with my job and hitting all the KPIs and not causing any drama, and actually potentially being overlooked for future promotions.
Definitely.
Because if you can imagine the direct report who's got all of that experience of the financials and the strategy and the data for the last year, being up against them in an interview situation, guess who's going to get the promotion?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, we've touched on this, but why is this so important, and why have you developed this program? Why does it matter to you and the sector?
Yeah, well, the data doesn't lie, right? So we know where we are in terms of female representation at C-suite level in FTSE 100, 500. We have still got a long way to go to achieve gender parity. Probably at the current rate, at least 5 generations before we're going to be anywhere near. So we can't just let things go along as they are.
The insurance industry, we say it's very male dominated, but I think there is a balance when you look at the sector. I mean, you're working in insurance. I started in insurance. I think you mentioned about your daughter working in insurance. But at the senior level, certainly, as you've said, it's more dominated towards male than female. So are you seeing a shift?
I think we've made great strides in the early careers and grad level. So I've spent the last 5 years of my career heavily focused on working with employers in financial services more broadly, regulated markets. But yes, a lot of my clients have always been in insurance and broking. And I think there's been so much good work done collectively as a sector to the point where we've now got entry level of more females than males. So, it's still sort of quite close, 51-52% are girls and the rest are boys. So that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And we've also been doing some really good work on diversity more broadly, looking at social mobility, and there's been lots of really good high profile industry activity and events. What you're absolutely right though, as we move through that career pipeline, we are still seeing high levels of female attrition and not as much representation at the sort of executive levels for all of those different groups. So there is still a lot of work to do. And that comes down to a number of different things. And development of women is obviously where I'm here to help. But there are other things that those companies can do for themselves, so lots of people are doing lots of work with ERGs and looking at policies and making things family friendly and menopause and those caring responsibilities that I touched on. So it's a case of, doing all of that activity to try and prevent that leakage of that really good talent at the mid-career level as well.
Do you think, in your conversations with women, and I have a lot of them as well, do you think that there's something inside that sort of we get to a certain level as well, and it just becomes all too much, doesn't it? And you've talked about all those sort of other elements that sort of can come in on people, but do you think that, I know there's so many things to do, but is there sort of one thing that women can do you think, to help other women or even indeed themselves? I mean, what do you think to that, Carolyn?
Let's start with themselves. So I think this goes right back to childhood, right? So if you go into any clothing store that sells kids' clothes and have a look at what is offered for girls and what is offered for boys, girls have got butterflies and flowers and fairies on theirs, and it's all pastel coloured. Boys have got, dinosaurs and, cars and construction and engineering kind of feel on all of their clothing, and it's all like, khaki and, these kind of things going on. So psychologically, it starts with things like that, where women feel like, I've got to have this hearts and butterflies, happy environment, and boys are like, rah, I can cause chaos, and I'm a mother of both a girl and a boy, and there are a lot of innate behaviors and energy levels that I've seen that kind of feed into that. So, but we self-perpetuate it as a society, I think. And then that goes through into how women behave, right? We don't want to cause conflict. We want to avoid it. We want to keep peace and harmony, and we don't push ourselves forward. And then at the other side, we've got, the males who are not afraid to do that. And it's so what I would want to do for women to be in order for them to help themselves is to really think about those experiences that you've had right from the very beginning. How much did you get complimented and praised at home, and what was it for, right? Because again, that sort of drives that thinking and those behaviors. And then to really start to think about what you think about yourself and how you talk to yourself, because that whole inner voice and what you tell your mind is so powerful. It cannot be underestimated. And if you wouldn't talk to somebody else the way you talk to yourself, then we've got some work to do. And if it starts from the moment you get up in the morning and you put your trousers on and you think these are getting a bit tight, and I'm this and I'm that and I'm frustrated with myself, and that dialogue continues all the way through the day, through loads of different things. And I'm running late and I'm exhausted and I didn't get to the gym and I've just eaten crap for my tea and I'm just useless. And that is just perpetuating that feeling of being stuck. So that's what I work on in the coaching as well, in the one-to-one coaching in the program, to really understand what that dialogue is like and where does it come from, and how can we change that into something that is going to be more positive going forward.
Excellent. And what about, I know we've touched on it when we've been speaking, but what about women, helping women? I know you like to talk, you've said you want to sort of talk a bit about that.
I cannot bear it when women get to a good position and they shut the door and pull the ladder up and that's it. I had to struggle to get here and I've done it, so you can struggle and learn your lessons the hard way and everything else. It's like, no, why would we do that? So I've made it my personal responsibility to offer mentoring and coaching to women who are trying to forge their way in L&D, from a very young age, working as internal L&D people and then potentially wanting to expand out into consultancy, and to just try and help them in any which way that I can, whether that is sharing advice, encouragement, ideas, just being a sounding board, opening doors. I was on WhatsApp with one of them yesterday. I've got a project that I want to get her involved with. So it crosses over into mentoring as well, and thinking about how you can just open doors and share your expertise and just be there really for other women and just give back. And it's so rewarding. And when I get like the testimonials on LinkedIn saying Carolyn was my career mum, it makes me feel very old, but it is also really nice.
And I think it's such a good point, because I see it and hear it in some of the women leaders that I work with, and as you say, I think there is a certain segment that, as you say, I think maybe our generation, the people that are in the positions right now, they've had to really struggle to get there and be so resilient and so driven, and regardless of what's been thrown at them, they've made it. But they've had to go through an awful lot, and it can be with some of them, well, I didn't have the help, so why do they need it? But as you say, for us all to thrive and succeed, it's about helping those others that perhaps aren't made that way, because we are all quite different, aren't we? And I think there's an element as well for some, I'm not saying all, but there's enough food at the table. It's like, well, if I help them, what about me? There's only a fraction of roles available for people like me, and if I elevate someone else, there won't be. But I think there is enough food at the table, isn't there? And the more that we can showcase the brilliance and the excellence and have more, the more it gets seen, therefore you change the biases, all of those sort of things as well. Carolyn.
Yeah, definitely. So it's having that kind of open mind, and that abundance mindset, and paying it forward. And sometimes you don't know where these things are going to lead. But in a lot of my experiences, things do come full circle. So I might have coached and mentored somebody and given my time and expertise freely, but then 5 years later, they're in a position where they've actually then said, oh, we could get you involved here, and it's reciprocal. So you never know. And as well as like giving my daughter opportunities, I've had other people help me out that way. So it just is a nice circle if we can keep doing that.
For sure. And time goes by so quickly. I mean, even, doing what I do, I track people's careers, and people 3 or 5 years ago might have been a mid-senior manager at best. Some of them are in C-suite roles already. So, these people could end up in your leadership team or even be hiring you at some point. I think, as you say, it's so cyclical. But it does come around, I think. Reap what you sow, of course.
Yes, decision makers of the future. If you're kind of in the middle of your career right now, and ultimately you might want to be a Ned in the future, somebody who you've helped could potentially be on the panel of decision makers appointing that Ned role. So
absolutely. Yep. So, and again, you touched on helping and mentoring people in the world of L&D. So, I mean, if someone were to look at leadership and development as a career for them, they're an aspirational leader, or they wanted to achieve what you had, do you have some advice for them?
I think it's really good to be able to think about what makes you happy at work. We spend so much time
Yeah.
at work, and some people love people leadership and other
Mm-hmm.
people find it, more challenging and are probably more suited to a technical role. If somebody is interested in learning and development as a career, there's usually a lot of characteristics that help with that. So, but again, going back to our kind of personality profiling, it's not make or break. You can always learn to use your non-preferred styles, but being able to kind of communicate and have high energy and enjoy working with people. But when I always tell this story just in our presence and gravitas and kind of masterclass on speaking, I used to dread public speaking. My go-to wardrobe staple was loose trousers because, and this is in the 90s, because my kneecaps used to shake when I
Wow,
stood at the
really?
front of the room. Yeah. And now I've done, stage speaking to hundreds of people. I've trained thousands of people in person and online, and absolutely love it. It's hard to shut me up. It gives me joy, all of that. But confidence is knowledge plus experience. And I had the knowledge, albeit a lot of the time in the early days, I had my training scripted and I'd memorized it in front of the bathroom mirror. But the experience of then standing up and speaking to a room and being okay with not being able to control the questions that might come at me, and not being able to control the dynamic of the personalities in the room. Some days they might be really noisy and other days they might be really quiet. It just came from just keep showing up, keep doing it, and then that becomes more familiar, and the more familiar it becomes, the more your brain settles down. And now I don't have to wear trousers. I still do because I'm just kind of used to it. I don't
Yeah.
feel right anymore if I don't. But that was a really interesting journey, and one that I'm very transparent about, so that people don't just think, oh well, you were born that way and you found it easy. No, it was a case of keep pushing through your comfort zone,
Yeah.
because that's where the learning happens, is outside of the everyday, and where you're comfortable. So doing
Yeah.
something every day, that even if it's just for a few minutes, that's a bit different and that stretches you, setting those goals and making a bit of progress every day towards them, for me has always been a key part, both personally and professionally, of what I've tried to do.
Yeah, I think it's such great points there. And I mean, I think the thing for me as well, with when you talk to leaders, and you'll know this, is we think everyone's got everything sorted, don't we? And even some like of the biggest CEOs, or I've seen some of the like the top 5 energy companies on BBC, and they're just not a good speaker. You think and expect them to be, but then they're not. You can see they're clearly uncomfortable, and perhaps but we think that they've just got everything sorted, and actually that's when we sort of get in our own heads, like you say, and that self-talk really does us down, when actually everyone's struggling with something. And I think the very best leaders surround themselves with people who are better at other things than themselves. And I think people too much want to do everything, but as you say, just doing that little bit every day, pushing yourself out of you'd be amazed at where you end up. And you talked about the length of your program, 12 months, which seems like a big investment, but surely it's a lifetime investment to improve ourselves. And just doing that little bit every day, in 2 or 3 years, you'll look back and go, oh my God, what have I done? Where am I? I think such fabulous perspective. Thank you. So, I mean, is there anything else that you would like to talk about today, Carolyn?
I think talent sustainability is an interesting topic, and thinking about generational differences and being able to think about what we are doing for people at every different stage of their career, and how we also go to where they are, because it's not one size fits all. You know, we've moved so much in the last 25 years. I've been in L&D, from doing like sheep dip training courses where everybody went on the same residential for a week, and no matter what your personality type was or what your learning needs were, you did the same thing as everybody else. And now I think we have evolved to understand that people learn in different ways. You know, we need to take care of people's needs from a neurodiversity point of view as well. There's massive generational differences inspired by tech and COVID and all those other things that we've experienced. So it's been quite the journey, I think, that we've been through as, you know, kind of just humans over the last 20 years, but also with L&D specifically becoming much more advanced in how we think and how we approach things, and a lot more flexible. So what I've really enjoyed about being at Sedgwick is looking at the programs that they've already been doing internally for their own people prior to my arrival, and they've done a brilliant job. You know, it's been award winning, a lot of the grad scheme and the internal adjuster program. So I'm able to take some of that and package it up and share that with the market, which has been really good, because we know that probably about 25% of the senior level of talent is going to leave in the next 10 years, right? So we've got this gap of talent sustainability that we really need to focus on. So I think that's key, but doing it in a way that fits the individuals, suits the business, you know, it's efficient as well, is obviously really key, because those days of going on a week-long residential are long gone.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we haven't talked about the two-letter AI at all, which has been fantastic, and I'm so pleased. But I do want to ask you, just as a curveball, really. I mean, do you see the advancement of AI agents, and certainly in the field of learning and development, when you talk about how we learn differently and how we can accelerate our learning and the different needs? Do you see that as a big innovation opportunity for learning and development with that?
Yeah, I think anything that is a trusted source of accurate knowledge and information at the right time is really helpful. You know, I've always been a big fan of learning technologies and having people able to check things in the moment. So particularly when people were on calls with customers and they're getting asked something and they're not 100% sure, rather than give the wrong information that's going to cause repeat contact or customer dissatisfaction, or even worse, a problem kind of further down the line because the wrong thing's been sent, the wrong solution's been applied. Check it, use the knowledge management system, you know. And so it's an evolution of that, really. I think where we get into trouble is if we are using it instead of common sense, or we are becoming then less familiar with retaining knowledge, right? So I think it's a good exercise to keep the mind active, to keep focusing on learn and retained information, rather than just always deferring to a digital answer.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Well, it's been a real pleasure, Carolyn. Thank you so much for sharing. So if anyone's watching this and they want to sort of learn more about the talent solutions that you and your team are offering, and or speak about anything that's on this, we'll put some links so people can go there, and that will obviously be in play. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been lovely to be here. So I've really enjoyed talking to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Carolyn.